10% of children and young people aged between 5 and 16 have a clinically diagnosed mental health disorder, yet 70% of children and adolescents who experience mental health issues have not received the appropriate interventions at a sufficiently early age. In 2014, the Mental Health Foundation found that approximately 1/5 of people in the UK aged between 16 and over showed strong symptoms of anxiety or depression. In February 2016, the NHS was committed to delivering a 5-year forward view for mental health, a 5-year plan for improving and increasing mental health treatment in the UK. The NHS has promised an additional £1 billion in funding by 2021. However, a lot of people have criticised the NHS. The Independent reported that the government was facing accusations of making empty promises, shown by newly released statistics which revealed that half of local NHS bodies plan to slash their spending on mental health services. Theresa May has admitted herself that treatment for mental health in Britain is patchy. The current ongoing debate is whether the NHS is doing enough to provide for patients with mental health problems. I'm Alexander. Join me as we take a look into the current issues surrounding NHS funding into mental health problems such as depression and how such problems within the NHS are affecting young patients today.
I've come to meet 18-year-old Ben, who's been receiving help from CAMHS for the past 2 months for his depression. I want to see where young people such as Ben stand when it comes to issues with NHS funding. Now tell me a little bit about the treatment you've been receiving for the past 2 months, and how long was it until you finally received the treatment or heard word from the NHS about your situation?
I was diagnosed with depression about 4 months ago, just after I lost my friend, and the NHS, they evaluated me with a one-on-one session. I was put on the waiting list, and I eventually got the treatment, and not long ago I was just discharged from CAMHS. So.
How did you react when they told you the initial time you'd be waiting for on the CAMHS waiting list?
I was surprised I had to wait, or by the fact that there's so many other teenagers like me who are all on this great big list. It's crazy that there are other young people that need help.
Do you think your experience has formed any sort of opinion on the NHS and any sort of funding going on at the moment?
The funding on mental health, it's not enough. Loads of other people, young people, old people, people in work, men, women, children, they're not receiving what they deserve to receive in order to look after themselves. Yes, there was an increase in funding in the NHS for mental health, but we don't see those benefits. We just want our voices to be heard and for us to be looked after.
So now we have an understanding of the current debates about whether there's enough funding or not, we naturally need to ask ourselves, what is depression? Because a lot of people have this misconception that it's just a case of sadness, but it's so much more in depth than that.
When explaining what depression is, we have to bear in mind that this is a mental health disease, which means there is a biological basis to this.
In recent years, scientists have discovered that the brain cell growth and connections also play a large role in the investigation. Studies reveal that the brain of a depressed person has a smaller hippocampus in comparison to a person without depression. Hippocampus is the brain's region that controls memory and emotion. The longer a person has been depressed, the smaller the hippocampus becomes. This is due to the deterioration of cells and networks, which can be triggered due to high levels of stress. It is important to remember that depression is more than a person feeling sad. Depression is a disease with a biological basis, along with psychological and social implications. Depression isn't simply just a biological disease. A depressed person is affected in many ways in their day-to-day lives. Hordes of challenges face those who suffer from depression. There are a number of social and psychological effects. Instead of resorting to hobbies or activities that once brought joy to you, you resort to other methods of escaping, staying in bed and not facing the world, drinking, or other forms of substance abuse. You feel like it's such a burden on yourself, and you may start to believe that you are a burden yourself and other people. Quite often, depressed people feel lonely, maybe not physically or in the sense that there are not many people around them, but in the sense that no one understands whatever situation they're going through or whatever has triggered their depression. And whilst you may feel alone, and you may question things about yourself, it is important to remember that the start of treating depression is by telling someone. Join us after the break as we interview Dr. Gordon on some of the more psychological effects of depression, and we shall investigate the effects of social media and how it is creating depression in young people today.